Thanks for tuning in to VSB After the Bell.
After the bell with the VSB.
I'm your host, Gianna Chow. VSB, otherwise known as the Vancouver School Board, is located on the unceded traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. The district is among the most diverse school systems in Canada, with an annual enrollment of just under 50,000 students, from kindergarten to grade 12 and adult education students. In recognition of World Mental Health Day on October 10th, on this month's podcast, we explore what mental health looks like for students. Claire Pianowski, an elementary school counselor, and Joe Ritchie, a secondary school counselor, joins us to talk about why it's important to pay attention to students' mental health, what types of supports are available at school, and mental health tips for caregivers. Thanks for being here with us today, Joe and Claire. To start off, can you tell listeners a little bit about yourself and really why did you want to become a counselor?
Thanks, Gianna. I'm happy to be here. My name's Claire Pianowski. I'm a full-time counselor for the VSB at two elementary schools, Kerrisdale and Queen Mary. I actually grew up in Point Grey and I went to high school in Kerrisdale, so it's an honor to serve the communities that are so familiar to me. And I'm on my own parenting journey, raising two awesome children with my husband right here in Vancouver. And I wanted to be a counselor since I graduated high school. I had a really challenging time in my teen years, and I saw all kinds of things that my friends were going through and that I personally went through, and my siblings, and I really wanted to take all of that knowledge and give back. And so I started volunteering at my high school in a counseling role, and that counselor told me I needed to get my teaching degree, which was a total shock. And so I went and got my teaching degree, and then I fell in love with teaching because you're really able to do that work of a counselor in the classroom because you're with those kids all day, every day. It's amazing. And then I was teaching French immersion kindergarten, and I went back, and it took me 3 years to get my master's, and I finished that in 2014, and I've been a counselor ever since. And I love it.
Yeah, I think I've got some similarities to you there, Claire. Joe at Templeton Secondary right now. I've been at Templeton now for the last 3 years. I was late to my education career. I had a couple other careers in my 20s and 30s. But when I was a kid, I remember wanting to be a social worker because my mom worked with social workers in her job, and they were just really nice to me. So I think I have always aligned with helping roles. And I love being a student as an adult. So going back to get my master's was something I felt very privileged to be able to do in my life. I was a drama teacher before being a counselor, and now I do counseling, but we're also still teachers as well. So I get to do both, and it kind of feels like a full circle moment because it's sort of, I always wanted to be in this helping role position.
That's actually really interesting to learn that all counselors have a teaching degree and then they move on to get their master's. And I think our students are very lucky to have such educated and well-prepared adults helping them throughout and navigating their school life. Can you walk us through a day in the life of a counselor?
I wake up every morning so excited to go to work. My office is this welcoming, happy place, and I love it. I love the job. There's so much about it that I enjoy, but probably the most is those one-on-one visits with kids where I'm really connecting with them, building a relationship, and giving them a safe, welcoming place to use as their own in the school that they can come down to if they're feeling overwhelmed with a lesson or a test or having trouble coming in to school in the morning or saying goodbye to their caregiver. But the day also involves a lot of staff meetings with administrators and teachers, family support, connecting with parents and caregivers, and then working with whole classrooms doing social emotional curriculum and mental health programming.
Yeah. I think of high school counselors as well, sort of as social working, case managing, teachers, admin support, assistants, crisis management, student services. I think that would be the placard above my door. Because we deal a lot with academic case management, which is sort of something that you touched on, and a lot of the social and emotional support, and the behavioral support is there, but there's, that crisis management. In high school, we also do a lot with attendance support. A big part of my job really too is course planning and scheduling and post-secondary support. We act as references for our older students as they start to find jobs and go into universities and other programs. And, we're coaches and sponsors and mentors and programs. But we're typically a drop-in service. I think it's the same in elementary, isn't it? It's an open door policy. If the door's open, come on in. And if my door isn't open in high school, we're fortunate enough at every high school to have about 4 counselors. So if I'm not there or if I'm not available for my students, you can always go to a different, or the students can always go to a different counselor. And if one of the counselors aren't there, well, then there's other support staff as well. There's a lot of different adults that they can talk to. And what we talk about with the students is as varied as the human beings that we serve, from crisis and safety planning to day-to-day social emotional problems and everything in between. We try to work, I hope, with a culturally sensitive lens to always check our own blind spots and really serve the communities that we live and work with.
Yeah, it's really interesting to be there without an agenda of having to deliver a curriculum, but we're there to receive what the students and families bring to us. So I love our job. It's the best.
Yeah.
That's really interesting and really actually good to know that, there's majority of high schools have 4 counselors per school. I know that growing up in the Vancouver area, in Vancouver School District, I think I only had 1 counselor who was partially available, but not really. And, I think it would have impacted my life growing up if I knew that there was going to be someone there always available for me to talk to. It may seem insignificant to someone else, but to me it was big if my friend wasn't talking to me, and knowing that there's a trusted adult in the school for me to speak to, I think it's very helpful.
Yeah. Building those connections can be tricky. And that's why things like I mentioned, the course planning, some of the things that get me out into the school in a different role, that let the students see me in a different way, can be really helpful in building those connections with the students to bring them in so that they can talk about us to so many different things. It doesn't have to be the big social emotional things.
Let's pivot here and let's talk about mental health. In the last few years, there's really been a big emphasis on mental health through schools. You see in mainstream media, a lot of people are talking about it a lot more. What does mental health look like in kids?
Boy, mental health. I like to focus, on the positive, on the word health. With young humans, just like with older ones, I think it starts with the basics, food, sleep, exercise, or if you don't like the word exercise, physical activation, or whatever word you want to use to move your body. But the basic human needs affect how we act, how we think, and how we feel. And as counselors, we're really aware of those connections with our students. There's an acronym that I learned, maybe you know it too, Claire, a few years ago, HALT, H-A-L-T. Yeah,
yes,
you know that one?
I do. For my kids, usually the H is the most accurate.
Hungry, yeah. Hungry, angry, why is somebody feeling angry? It's a secondary emotional response. As counselors, we know that. So something is triggering that. Lonely, connection is such a huge part of what our kids are going through, whether they're connecting well or not, and we all want to help them connect better. Or are they tired, right? So this is a really easy way of just thinking about it. It includes the basics and acknowledges the human experience of feeling alone as well. So sometimes when I'm with a youth, I might mentally take a pause to be curious. Have they eaten? Have they slept? Are they feeling isolated and lonely? Like, what's going on with them?
I definitely know for myself, I experience hangry quite a bit. So it's good to know that these feelings are identified, and that I need to control my emotions and identify I'm the first 2 letters in HALT.
Yeah, well, we're all trying to work within a regulation, right? We're trying to be there's a baseline emotional state as being regulated. hopefully, that's a happy place to be. And it takes some work to be in that zone. We all go out of it. We go into the real highs and we go into the real lows, just like a thermostat, we turn it up and down. And it's the work to get back into that baseline, emotionally regulated state that is the positive mental health work that we as counselors and the trusted adults in the building can be there to help students with.
I love that you put it that way, and that's such an important way to think about mental health, is being work that we can do to ensure that we're able to live a happy and productive life, because that's what we want for our kids, and they need those skills to recognize that they're in one of those extremes and bring themselves back to the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about being in the positive state, because that's easy to be in, but it's about how you get back to the positive state.
I think so. Yeah.
Those are the tools that you're teaching kids. And so is that why mental health matters for children?
Yeah, I think like any type of health, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, social, we can't really enjoy life unless that piece is good. Every aspect of life is going to rely on our health to be enjoyed. So mental health is everything. And it doesn't mean, to have positive mental health doesn't mean everything in our life is positive. Our thoughts are always positive, and our actions and feelings. Everyone will have those fluctuations. That's completely natural. The good mental health is our ability to deal with everyday stress or disappointment, things going wrong. And when a child has positive mental health, they have coping skills to self-regulate when they get upset. For a lot of kids, that's cuddling up with a stuffy or self-soothing in some way, and I'm sure it looks different with youth.
Well, I was saying to Claire before, I think we all have a metaphorical, emotional stuffy. We all need to self-soothe. It's not a phrase that we hear much past the age of 2, but we, as adults, we need to self-soothe. It's something that is intrinsic throughout our entire lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my self-soothing is definitely a good Netflix show, a guilty pleasure of mine, a good reality TV show.
Nice.
Fair enough.
Very good, very good. You're doing your work, Gianna.
I'm glad I'm on the right track. Can we talk about the common myths around mental health, and what does that look like in students, in secondary students and in elementary students?
Wow. Myths. It's a big word. I believe, what we are working towards at an educational and societal level, at least here in the West, is to educate, to dismantle stigma, the stigma that surrounds mental health. And that's a complex undertaking, right? Assumptions about what mental health is and the fear youth have surrounding peer perception of it is, as we all know, very personal, and it's cultural, generational, developmental. So although I don't think stigma necessarily, it's not the myth, it is very real, but the perceptions surrounding our youth's mental health is something I approach with a lot of listening and care and education. And I am seeing a shift in our schools. I've worked in a lot of schools. There is so much more language that youth are versed in now to articulate their experience. And maybe not just the youth, but all of us. But there are also myths about what mental health issues or a diagnosis might look like. When I think about that language and dismantling stigma, we have to think about, well, where's the education coming into it? So what's the difference between a diagnosis and a mental health issue? And that's what we're helping youth participate in.
Yeah, I think it's a real myth that mental health problems are uncommon. That was untrue even before the COVID-19 pandemic, but now that's even further from the truth. Mental health problems are common. In fact, the World Health Organization estimated 1 in 4 people in the world will be affected by a mental or neurological disorder at some point in their lives. What are you noticing in high school?
Well, statistics are interesting, aren't they? And, because one of the statistics are also that 1 in 3 high school students are going to experience a mental health issue, which might sound scary, but it's when you think about the fact that a mental health issue, once again, getting into that language, what's the difference between a diagnosis and a mental health issue? I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling upset. That can be considered a mental health issue. Yeah. And with the appropriate attention to my developmental needs, I'm going to build my resiliency and my character and my strength and confidence and work towards success with that.
Yeah, I think that's actually very applicable too. As you know, we get into adult lives, you're going to experience stress at some point of your life,
Yeah.
and probably many points of your life. And it's going back to what we talked about is how do you regulate those feelings and go back to the positive state when if you get into a car accident, how you go back to and how you deal with those stressful situations. And that's kind of the foundation that you're laying to these students and how they can carry those skills and apply them in the future after they graduate from school. And then, so can we talk about the common struggles and what you see in your students?
Well, in elementary school, some mental health concerns in kids might look like separation anxiety coming into school, or difficulty sleeping, perfectionism, school avoidance, friendship difficulties. We see a lot of behavior concerns, unexpected behaviors that kids are exhibiting, struggles with identity or trouble focusing. There can be stress due to family or home dynamics, and feeling anxious or overwhelmed by worries. And all of these difficulties can negatively impact students' ability to learn. And then the pandemic, it's added a new layer of complexity to the difficulties children face. We're starting to return to what our new normal will be, but a lot of kids still fear the coronavirus, and they're thinking a lot more about germs. There's been social distancing, so not sure how close to get to people, wondering where do I stand on mask wearing and vaccination, worried about family members getting ill, or maybe still not really able to travel or be close to family. And for us too, as adults, there's a lot of uncertainty around the duration of the pandemic. What are the long-term impacts? Financial insecurity. On top of that, we've got war, political unrest, the climate crisis. And even if we try our best to protect children from these adult worries, the stress that we feel as caregivers will be passed down to them in the family home. And, kids, they couldn't practice socializing or turn-taking, a lot of them. And so there's been some social difficulties in schools, and also learning challenges from kids that have been out of schools for so long.
Well, and not surprisingly, the answer doesn't change much when you go into high school. I mean, that, for lack of a better word, list of issues or of struggles that you mentioned are really what we're seeing in the high school as well. If I was going to add something about, what we see in high school, maybe it's that a common struggle I see is students trying to be strong with all these things that they're carrying around every day. They're also really concerned about how their peers are noticing them. So everyone's trying to act strong, right? So sometimes someone will come into my office and it'll be just to talk about their course planning or something. But then 2 minutes later, the door is shut and there's tears, and they're able to all of a sudden, divest themselves of that huge responsibility of the burden of what's going on in their lives and just feel safe and just cry it out for a few minutes. And then we can go back to talking about other things or whatever the student needs to do. It's totally student-led. But yeah, I think I see along with all these struggles, just that struggle to be strong in the face of their peers and in front of all the other people in the building. And I'm glad you mentioned the pandemic, because of course that was huge. In high school learning and going down to the quarter system and things, there was a lot. It impacted families in a really big way. What I'm loving seeing this year is how the resiliency, human beings really are adaptable. I know that there were struggles, and I know it impacted families, but I really am seeing energy returning into our schools and vivacity returning back into our schools. Yeah. It's great to see.
The kids are so grateful to be back, and we're so happy to have them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think having you there as an outlet is really helpful to know. And so what other kind of ways can you directly help students? That's a long list that you provided there, Claire. What's your role in helping them overcome those struggles?
You know what? I really love being able to offer kids a space to come and spend time in. I've designed my space to be really neutral colors and soothing blues, botanicals, plants, lamps. It's a whole setup to make it feel like the comforts of home. I've got a coffee station. It's great. And I want that to be just like, if you build it, they will come. Like, I'm just here. I'm available. There's so many ways students can access my support. They self-refer. I'll walk into classes and tell them all the different ways. So your parent could email me. You could ask your teacher to get in touch with me. The principal can ask for my services. You can put a note under my door, note in my mailbox. There's a million different ways, but you're there. You're ready to receive what kids are bringing to you. And then I do a little bit of in-class work as well. So those are the moments when I'm delivering some information. So it might be on human diversity and how we can promote social justice in our schools. Or with the little kids, I'll do the TAPS program, talking about personal space or things like that I'm able to go in and, depending on the situation, deliver in the classroom.
So Joe, what about you? What does that look like in your world with secondary students?
Well, as I mentioned, we're an open door, drop-in basis kind of service. So just the fact that we're there's 4 counselors, every day. We're lucky. We're really lucky. We're sort of privileged that way that we're able to provide that service for the students on a daily basis. And for us, it's about how do we get to know the kids. So there are so many different things that we do other than just the counseling aspect of it, so that we're building a relationship with the kids in the communities, hopefully, right, in the school community, that will help so that they start to get to know us, they start to come into our office, and then once they get into our office, we can start helping them work on the things that they're having troubles with. And if they don't want help and they just need to vent, that's okay too. Mm-hmm. Or if they're just looking for a resource, we're like 411 when it comes to resources. Right. The school counselors can be a first point of contact for both parents and for students to help them figure out, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. Where do I go with this?
And, the kids, they spend a majority of their time in schools, but what about when they're out of schools and with their families? What can families do to proactively care for their child's mental health?
I think it's a great idea to have a family meeting or a conversation at home where maybe you could set some goals in a variety of areas. So, for example, what's our physical goal going to be for the week? Maybe it's a family activity or how many steps you're going to get. And then what's a mental health goal? And just talking with those kids in your household about what can we do for our mental health? What would that look like? Maybe we're going to spend some time outdoors every day away from screens. Or maybe we're going to choose a positive statement or a family motto that we're going to rehearse that week. In my family, we say we always do the hard thing first. So we get our chores out of the way before the fun. And it comes up and it gets reinforced. Just last night, we were driving home from a dinner at my uncle's, and I was telling the kids in the back seat, hey, aren't you so glad we did the hard thing first and we got our errands out of the way before dinner, so now we can just go home. So it's setting up those good habits. And caregivers can also model positive mental health by engaging in their own self-care and making that known and obvious. So I'll make my point that, I'm feeling like I need some time away right now. I need my alone time, or I'm going to go to my exercise class because that's what makes me feel good. Or I'm going to go spend some time with my friends. And that's pretty normalized in my household that I need to do self-care as well. And also just recognizing your emotions. So if I'm feeling stressed, that's okay. I can calmly acknowledge it, choose a strategy, and really, even if I'm not feeling that stressed, just make a point of walking through that for my kids to see. Or purposely, I made a mistake. I can't believe I spilled the milk. Okay, here's what I'm going to do to clean that up, just to show that it's okay to not be perfect.
Kind of show your math, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you're doing a math equation, you have to write it all out and show how you got to there. And
I love that.
Kind of how you're.
Yes,
you're
I've got little kids at home, so yes, I'm showing my math.
I like that you talk about the good habits, and the fact that as adults we're modeling those good habits to youth all the time, and we're all very familiar with the old airplane adage of putting the mask on ourselves first. So the self-care thing, even though we've all heard it time and time again, how are we practicing it in the homes? And, when I have parents, really some of the big concerns that they're coming to me with are things like, I want to give them more autonomy in their lives. I don't want to be hovering over them while they're doing things like homework. So for parents, it's really being able to process what they're doing on a daily basis and reassuring them that, follow those instincts. Make sure you're taking care of yourself first. And then once you've done that, then you can start to think about, okay, do I need to really start concentrating on watching them do their homework every single night? Or can I trust that they're doing it on their own? Because there's a lot of questions out there about parenting, right? And it's, I sometimes align it with throwing 5 different 1,000-word or 1,000 puzzle piece crossword puzzle, throw it in a garbage bag, mix it all up, put that out on a table, now put it all together. That's what parenting is like.
Yeah.
There's no right answer, and it's going to take a long time to figure it out. But take care of yourself and know that having those questions is really natural, and stay curious about what your kid's doing, and figure it out along with the rest of us. Yeah.
So role modeling, reinforcing, repeating, those are the kind of key takeaways that I'm hearing from you too. And so if I'm a concerned parent and I want to know and I want to find extra support for my child, where can I go to? What are the resources available to me?
Well, in the school, there's quite a few. In the high school, there is certainly, and I think it's the same in elementary. Trusted teachers are the first place to go, whether that's a counselor, because we're considered teachers as well, but whether it's a counselor, a trusted adult, or, in the high school, we also have SASSY workers, people who are support workers that work through VCH with the kids as well. So there's SASSY workers, there's youth and family support workers, there's multicultural liaison workers, there's Indigenous support workers and educators, there's the community support team worker. So there's quite a team at the high school level. And if you don't know who your team is, counselors are a great first point of contact. By all means, email me, call me, ask me, who do I go to with this issue or with this problem, Mr. Ritchie? And, I'll let them know. And if you go out into the community, there's so much out there. I mean, maybe the first place you could stop at is, if it's not your family doctor or pediatrician, it's the VSB website, because there's a huge list of resources on there. But definitely one of my go-tos with parents is Kelty. Out of Children's Hospital, there's the Kelty Mental Health Parents and Caregivers. That's Kelty, Kelty. Just Google it. And for parents and caregivers who are struggling or looking for help, they do so much. There's a lot out there. And then, something else.
The Vancouver School Board's website has, I believe it's under Student Services. There's some links, and then the Erase BC, the government website, has a lot of information. But I agree, Joe, it's easier for parents to just get right in touch with us, and we can help set them up with whatever referrals and resources might be applicable. Child and youth mental health is a really good one as well. And parents can also phone MCFD, Ministry of Children and Family Development, and get information on what is out here in my community depending on my certain case. Like, my kid really needs sports that might be covered, or whatever you're looking for. You don't even have to give your name. You can just call to consult and get hooked up.
It's important to know that. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know that they can call MCFD just for consultation anonymously. Just say, I just have a question about either my own child or a child in the community. They can call and consult with a social worker at MCFD. And there's also Victim Services BC, and I think one last thing I was just thinking of was BC 211. Just like 911, you can call for emergency and crisis and stuff. BC 211, you can actually Google it, and it's got a huge list of free resources for family. You can either just dial 211 or Google BC 211, and they have so many resources. Everything that's in British Columbia. Like, some parents come to me saying, why isn't there a one-stop shop? And why aren't all these different resources connected so that they know about each other? The closest thing I think that we have to that is BC 211.
This has been very insightful, so thank you so much for joining us. And I think, as someone who grew up in the Vancouver School District, it's so great to hear that there's so many additional resources available to kids compared to when I was growing up. So, I also have 2 children who are about to go, one's in the school system already, and it's reassuring as a parent to know that if my child is struggling, there are additional supports. And just if your child is not struggling, there are supports just as a casual conversation. Talk to your counselor, and it doesn't have to be anything. It can just be a relationship building experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gianna.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Claire.
Thanks, Joe.
We have a reoccurring segment on the show called Matter of the Month, where we address the most talked about topics. For the month of October, the most talked about topic, definitely within the media, was the municipal election. In Vancouver, 6 new trustees and 3 returning trustees were elected to serve as the board for the next 4 years. Carolyn Broady is a trustee for West Vancouver, but also the president of the British Columbia School Trustees Association and vice president of the Canadian School Boards Association. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you so much for having me.
So during an election, many know about the mayoral candidates and city councilor candidates, but there's less attention given to school trustees. So to start off, can you tell us the role of a trustee and a board and why their roles are important?
So the role of a trustee is fundamentally to improve student outcomes. And the role of a board of education, a trustee actually becomes part of a corporate board. Every decision that's made by the Board of Education is supported once decided by all board members. And the role of the board is to set policy for the school district, to hire the superintendent, and to oversee the budget. Those are the 3 main areas that board looks at and oversees.
And how do they impact students directly, or how do they impact schools directly? What's the type of work that they do?
So what we would do is we would look at what's happening locally in your local school district. So things that are happening in Vancouver are very different from how boards and districts operate, say, in northern BC and other places. Vancouver is a very large school district with a vast array of students, different socioeconomic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. There's a lot of students with ELL needs, English second language learners. There are students with diverse learning needs. So the importance of a locally elected board is to support the needs of the local community. And that's where the value of a trustee comes in, is they work with the local community members, work with the school district to support the individual students and families' needs in their local constituency.
So if someone, as a parent who has a concern about their child, do you recommend them going to their trustee, or how does that work in terms of going to a trustee or going to the board?
So really the proper protocols if parents have an issue is if you can, please always speak to your classroom teacher first. And from there, if you need further assistance, go to your school administrator and work with them. If it goes beyond that, you contact the school district who will work with you. And at some point, if necessary, trustees will become involved. But trustees really are governors of the system. They're not involved in the day-to-day operations of a school or the school system. So you wouldn't go to your trustee first. They would just refer you back to your local school to begin any conversations that need to take place.
I see. So that's really a good point to make. The school is really responsible for the operations, the day-to-day, and the trustee is more about policy and governance and how the whole district would be affected. Is
That's
that right?
exactly the role of the trustee. It's overseeing and governing the system, but not being involved in the day-to-day operations.
And so Vancouver, I feel like we're pretty unique because we have 9 trustees. That's quite a bit. That's a big number, I would say, especially if you're looking at the election ballot to choose 9 people. Do you know why there are so many trustees in Vancouver compared to other school districts?
Well, there are other boards across the province with 9. So it is set by the School Act, by the Minister of Education. Probably many, many years ago, Vancouver was allotted 9 trustees, but there are either 5 trustees in a school district, 7 or 9. I don't know why Vancouver was given 9. It would be a great project for a history student in grade 11 or grade 12 to dig into the archives to find out what process and how that came to be.
Yes, listeners, if anyone finds out the reason why, please let us know through Instagram, Facebook, and we'd be happy to follow up and share that information back. Well, Caroline, thanks so much for joining us for Matter of the Month, and that's really insightful information to know about how trustees impact student outcomes and how they impact schools. It's at a policy and governance level. But, it does matter who you vote for as your trustees and your representatives of your school district.
It does. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. VSB After the Bell, produced by the VSB Communications Department. Thanks to music teacher Mr. Bonnell and the Nightingale Elementary students for the original theme song. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter at VSB39, or TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Vancouver School Board. And don't forget to subscribe to VSB After the Bell anywhere you get your podcasts.
After the bell, after the bell.